Hello and welcome to CodeSlicing. In this episode, we're not going to be doing any animating, but we are going to be doing some designing. Copying. Because we're going to be doing the Safari icon from iOS. I thought it might provide an interesting challenge because there are several layers to consider and we need various techniques in order to accomplish the task. So there's something for everyone in this one. We've got 10 minutes to do it. Follow along if you like, and let's get started. Right, so I've put in the boilerplate that I normally do for these things. If you want to know what that is, check out the previous ones that we've done, but I think it's all fairly self-explanatory. I'm going to create this icon using sizings that are based on the icon's frame, including strokes and the sizes of the pointers and the graduations, and all of that stuff will hinge off of that. And now we're ready to start. So let's start that clock. And the first thing we're going to do is put in a geometry reader. And we're going to layer things on top of each other inside ZStack. The first thing is a rounded rectangle with a corner radius of 0.2 of the width of this view. All right, now we need to color it. I'm going to fill it with white so we can see it. And the next layer is going to be our circle, which is going to have a nice gradient in it. So let's define some colors. The first thing we need to do is put in a little utility to make things easier for us. This is going to take a red, which is a double, green, and a blue, which is also a double. It's going to return a color. And that color is the red over 255, the green over 255, and the blue over 255. There we are. Now let's create them. Gradient start is create color 36,199,249. I have another one for the end, and that's going to be 37,109 and 236. Okay, let's put our circle in. Circle. We're going to fill it with a linear gradient with gradient start and gradient end. And we'll send it to the bottom. And we'll give it a frame of 0.87 of the width of the icon. Let's resume. Okay, that's looking nice. Now we're going to put on the graduations. So the first thing we need to do is define a layout guide for this. I'm going to do that up here. Right, so grad layout config is a layout guide config of type polar with some very specific rings. 0, 0.83, 0.91, and 1. And we have 72 segments. Now we can actually define our shape. So let's put it here. Graduations. And then we can use it. Graduations. Give it a stroke of white with a line width of 1% of the width, 0.01. And we'll give it a frame of 0.8 of the width. So it's slightly less than the size of the circle. Now let's resume so we can create this thing and see what we're doing as we go. So first thing we do is lay out our layout guide. RG is the grad layout config laid out in our rectangle. Easy. And for each segment in 0 Y count, which is the segments in a polar one, we take a line from the outer one, which is 3, and the segment, and we go 2. If the segment is odd, then we go to the second one. If not, we go to the first one, and the y coordinate is the segment. That's how far we go around. And look at that. We've already got our graduations, and they are looking fantastic. So now we've got our graduations on there, we need to think about the pointer. And for that, I'm going to create a view specifically for the pointer, like this. Right, that can be private, actually. And before we do anything, we'll need a shape, which is the triangle. So I can refer to it here. It's going to be a Z stack. And for now, we'll just put a triangle in there and we'll fill it with white. And then we can refer to it here. Right, there's our pointer. Okay, let's resume and then start constructing this. So we need rather a detailed grid layout for this one because of the triangle in question. It's going to have a width, and the width of the tip itself is also going to be a factor here. So we need graduations that allow us to target those things. So I'm going to define things in half widths, and you'll see why in just a minute. So let's define some widths. Half triangle width is 0.065. Half triangle tip width is 0.005. The pointer layout config is a layout guide config of type grid this time. And these are the specific columns. It goes 0 and then 0.5 minus half the triangle width, 0.5 minus half the triangle tip width, 0.5 plus the half triangle tip width, and 0.5 plus the half triangle width. And we'll throw in 1 at the end there as well, and we'll have 2 rows. And if I lay this out on my pointer after resuming, and actually down here, we'll just show layout guides. Then you can just about see, if I zoom in here, right, there's our layout guides, which is going to allow us to draw this triangle shape very easily. So let's do that. We say var g is the pointer layout config laid out in a rectangle, of course. First thing we do is move to 1, 1. Then we draw a line to 2, 0. Then we'll draw a line to 3, 0. Then we'll draw a line to 4, 1. So let's give this the same frame as the graduations. Then we'll define a color for it. Pointer color is create color 251, 61, 41. And then we can use that in our pointer here to fill with red. Let's resume. And then we'll add another one, which we'll fill with white actually. But we're going to rotate it 180 degrees. Lovely. Right, 2 things left. We'll give this thing a little bit of a shadow on that pointer, and we'll rotate it by 50 degrees. Now, because this consists of 2 triangles, we need to be careful. We can't just drop a shadow on that pointer. It will look, it won't work. What we need to do is actually create our own shadow, which is going to be another pointer blurred out and of a different color. So what I'll do is I'll actually add a property to pointer here. Is shadow. We'll set it to false by default. We will then say, is this a shadow? If it is, then we'll go with the color gray. And then we'll do the same for this one. And now we'll put this in a group. And we'll have 2 pointers in there. One of them, the one at the bottom, is a shadow, which we'll then blur. Take off that layout guide. There you go, that gives us a little shadow there. And rather than 5, we're going to base the blur on 2% of the width of the icon. 0.02. Now we have to just rotate it. Rotate 50 degrees. And there we have our lovely Safari icon. If you don't know about layout guides or how to use them, then I've done a series on this, which I will link to in the description below. Like we've got a nice polar layout guide for the graduations, which I never actually showed you. So let me show you what that looks like. Grad layout config. There you are. Can you see that? If I just make it say red, might be a bit clearer. There we are. So you can see that in this graduations shape here, that I am going to the outer one and I'm drawing a stroke in. And when it's odd, I'm only going into 2, the second one, which is at 0.91, right? So it's 0, 1, 2, 3 is the outer one, which is 1. And we're going into 0.91 of the radius. And if it's even, we're going into 0.83 of the radius. And that's what constructs the graduations like that. And it turns into a very, very easy bit of code and not a hint of trigonometry obfuscating things. So another thing you might be interested in is the shadow here. Let's take off the top one. There's the shadow. Okay. And at the moment, the shadow is just gray, which doesn't pick up any of the color underneath it. I'd rather multiply my shadow. So let's see what happens when I do that. Blend mode, multiply. See, this one looks nice, but the other one, well, it looks a bit weird, doesn't it? In fact, it looks exactly the same as if we hadn't multiplied it at all. And this is still a bug, okay? In Xcode 12, this is still a bug that hasn't been fixed yet. Will it ever be fixed? I don't know. But it's something to be aware of when using blend modes, is that it just sometimes will not work the way you expect, unless the thing you are modifying with a blend mode is actually within a drawing group. Watch this. Drawing group. And lo and behold, it works. So if I add that back, then we've got, I think, a nicer looking shadow. It's more prominent, maybe too prominent. But obviously, that's up to you to decide. Let's see what happens if we have varying sizes of this icon. We'll do what we did before with the other Disney Plus icon. And we'll say that this is in a V stack. We'll put this in a for each of 200, 150, an ID of self. And we'll put the size in here. And as you can see, it doesn't matter what size this icon is because both the strokes and the geometry are all based on the size of the icon. So we've got no magic numbers actually driving the sizes. We do have numbers that are driving the ratios of the sizes, but once they're locked in place, they don't have to change because they are faithful to the original design. Now, just for a laugh, let's make that thing rotate because, you know, it's fun. Right. Animating is false. On appear. Animating is true. Put it in an animation block. the duration of 6. Repeat forever. Auto reverse is false. And we'll rotate if animating 360 degrees. Resume. Shrink it down so I can get to the play button. A lovely, rotating, authentic looking Safari icon. Times 3. Let's give them a bit of space. There we are. Absolutely wonderful. Well, there we are. The Safari icon is done. And fairly authentically, I think. And even though there was quite a lot to it, it wasn't overly complicated in the end. If you like that, then give it a like because it helps people find the channel. It makes me really happy and I really do appreciate the support from the bottom of my heart. If you want to see more of this kind of thing, then consider subscribing, and that's what you'll get, because in the next episode, we're going to be dealing with the breathe animation. And there is a lot to consider in that one, believe me. So join me for that. It's going to be brilliant. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them below. But in the meantime, thanks for joining me. See you next time.